I'm with George Napolitano. He's a world-famous photographer of wrestling. What brings you here to Cauliflower Alley?
Well, I've been coming to Cauliflower since the 90s, but I haven't come in the last 6-7 years. I decided this year to make a trip to see people that I haven't seen in a long time. And that's the way it is, you know, it's the ring of friendship, and you want to see different people. You don't know how long we're going to see them around for.
And superstar Billy Graham's done a lot of interviews with us over the years, and one of the stories he tells is smartening you up to winning the World Championship in Baltimore. So I was wondering if we could get your version of that story.
Well, if he says smartening me up, that's not exactly correct. Well, I'll say how it started. I went and I picked him up in Long Beach where he was living, and I was driving him to Baltimore. And it was Saturday night, and it was just, I used to drive him around a lot. So it wasn't the first time I would drive him. And as we're driving, he says, I hope you have a lot of film tonight. I says, a lot of film? Why do I need a lot of film? He says, I'm wrestling Bruno, you know, it's a big match. I says, how many times have I seen you wrestle Bruno? I said, I've seen it more times than I need to. He says, you better have a lot of film. I says, I have enough film for you. I know how the ending's going to be. I have enough film for you and Bruno. He said, it might be different tonight. And that's the smartening up I got. I'm in the arena, and I was as surprised as everyone else when he won. Didn't really expect it, and he didn't say, I'm going to win tonight. People can say what they want to say. I don't mean Billy, but people could say they knew this, they knew that. And most times they really didn't. They might have had a hunch. I didn't even have a hunch. I just knew it was another match in Baltimore. Why would he lose in Baltimore? Not in New York or Boston or somewhere else. It was a spot show Saturday night in Baltimore. So I really, really, really had no idea, other than him telling me, I hope you have a lot of film tonight, which is, in his mind, he was smartening me up. But to me, I'm just driving the car, and I'm just thinking of all the pictures I had already taken between Bruno and Billy for a lot of years.
Now, 19 out of his 20 MSG headlines as WWE champion, he sold out. I'm sure you were at a number of those title defenses. What was the crowd like when he was in the ring?
Well, first you say you were at a number of them. I was at every one of them. I was at every match in the Garden from the 70s onward. And his persona was bigger than life. And as far as I know, and again, I'm not saying that I know any better than the next person, as far as I know, the WWF at that time were not really happy that this villain, they call him a villain, was getting this fan reaction that they were getting. They didn't know what to expect from it. People were cheering for him, him and his 24-inch pythons and what have you. And he was the prototype. Well, let's go ahead. He was a prototype for Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, and if you talk to him, he'll really admit it, and that's where he got his shtick from. But the people were intense and really, really into him. It was really great.
If they had let him turn face at that time, how do you think the crowd would have accepted him?
Oh, they would have accepted him tremendously, because Billy personified the 70s. His outfits, his look, he was colorful. He was, if you think of the 70s, it's superstar. The days of superstar Billy Graham.
And what was he like outside the ring, hanging out with you?
We really were friends. We really were friends. I met him first in Houston, Texas, and we just hit it off. I did an interview and I did a story, and I sent him the story. And he said, "Oh, this is great. You know, thank you, thank you." And he was thanking me. And he said, "I'm going to come up to New York. I'm going to get in touch with you." And he came up to New York first to be in a WBC World Bodybuilding competition, sponsored by Dan Laurie. And I went and took pictures, and he was in shape, but he'll always tell you about his legs. His legs were never his strong point. And I took pictures there, and I gave him the pictures, and I put him in a wrestling magazine, which was different because it wasn't just wrestling, it was bodybuilding. And he really loved it. And then, I don't know exactly timeline, everything is condensed. Later, whether it be months or years, a year or two, he called me and said, I'm coming to New York. I'm coming to New York. Pick me up at the Kennedy. And I picked him up at Kennedy Airport, and I brought him to my house. My wife cooked him dinner, which she did on many an occasion. He was at my house quite a bit, really. And aside, there was one time we were watching wrestling from Florida. In New York, you were able to see wrestling, championship wrestling from Florida. It was on a UHF station that you used rabbit ears to get the signal. And I said, "You want to see wrestling tonight?" "Wrestling?" He said, "Yeah, from Florida." "Florida? Okay, I haven't seen this." And it's a 12-inch black and white TV. And he puts the chair, he pulls the chair up close, and we're watching it. And then all of a sudden, Dusty Rhodes comes out. And Dusty Rhodes starts going crazy and doing his sing-song. He says, so he gets even closer. He says, that no good SOB, he stole my interview. Because at that time, you didn't know what was going on anywhere else in the country unless you were there. And then it was funny. It was a real funny incident. And then as I said, we were friends throughout. I would drive him all the time to Boston. I would drive him to Philadelphia. I would drive him everywhere. My house was his mailing address because he lived out at a hotel. Yeah.
And he actually still lives at a hotel, and he's actually has a GoFundMe going right now because he needs a $40,000 operation, and he can't afford it. So anyone watching this, he does have a Facebook page, Billy Graham, and all of his GoFundMe information is on there. And who are some of the other favorite wrestlers that you've photographed over the years? Okay,
well, I'm actually still at it, and so now this is closer to 50 years than anything else. In the 70s, my favorite really, as growing up as a kid, was Bruno Sammartino, Italian from Brooklyn. Bruno Sammartino was my guy. And when I first started to take photos, it was a thrill to meet Bruno, you know, just to really see him at first, because there's a guy that I grew up watching and idolizing. So he was my guy. And then to see him later, it was a really thrill. But then Superstar winning, that's why I never thought he was going to be Bruno. Nothing against him. He was my friend. I'm driving with him, but I didn't think Bruno was ever going to lose. And nobody ever really did. And but you had said who I liked photographing. I liked the 70s, and I loved Mil Mascaras, again, because he was colorful. And he was good body, good build, he could move. He did a lot of things that we didn't see at that time. For himself, he was ahead of his time, Mascaras. Now they do so many more different things than what you see. But Mil was like right up there, like one of my favorites. And then really, the all-time favorite was Ric Flair. To me, Ric Flair personifies wrestling. There was nobody I seen who was better than Rick. He might have had Ricky Steamboat who could keep up with him, and other guys who could keep up with him, but Rick was in a class by himself. But if you were to ask somebody who's like 20s or early 30s and who was their favorite, Ric Flair really wouldn't enter into the picture because they remember Rick from seeing him later when he really wasn't at top of his game. You know.
Did you photograph the Sheik much, the original Sheik?
I used to go to Detroit to see the Sheik, and in New York we had the Grand Wizard, and he was a good friend of mine. The Grand Wizard managed Superstar, so I was really friends with the Grand Wizard. And in Detroit, he was the manager of the Sheik. He was Abdullah Farouk, and he would tell me, "We're having a big card in Detroit," and I would fly to Detroit, and I would have my pass waiting for me, and the Sheik brought me in, not the Sheik, the Grand Wizard, still call him the Wizard, Abdullah Farouk, that is now, brought me in to meet the Sheik, and he says, "This is my friend." Well, since I was introduced as Ernie Roth's Ernie's friend, he treated me really nice, you know. But I'll say, though, going there, I had to be really fast because the matches lasted a minute or two, if that.
They were lots of action and lots of blood and fast, I guess.
Oh, yes, but that was that's the style that people today call ECW. That was the forerunner of ECW.
Why do you say the 70s was your favorite decade compared to the 80s when I guess it really exploded in the 80s, the popularity of wrestling?
Well, because remember now, I started in the 70s, so you always harken back to what you remember, what you liked when you first started. So that's why I say the 70s. But of course, the 80s were great. I mean, I went everywhere. I went to pay-per-views for the WWE, WWF, WWE, and WCW. And then in the 90s, when NWO came out, I was doing 4, 5, 6, 7 magazines a month, not just like a magazine 1 month. It was depending on what was happening. And on the WWE end, they had The Rock, and you had Steve Austin. which again later were favorites of mine because of what they did and how they did it.
Did The Rock pose for you much over the years?
Well, when I first met The Rock, he introduced himself to me and says, I used to watch you. I know you from when I was a kid. You took care of my grandfather, Peter Maivia, when he wrestled Superstar and he did all the spot shows. You took care of my grandfather. You took care of my father. And he said, if there's anything I can do for you, just ask. And there he was a young rookie, really. And I said, okay. And I always kept that in mind. And until today I do a lot of movie premieres and concerts and shows. And whenever I see him, if I'm taking pictures at a movie premiere, and he walks by, he gets right off the press line, hugs me, puts his arms around me, hugs me, and all the other photographers say, don't stop talking. And he'll say, George is my friend since I'm this big. And yeah, if you say pose for me, today I mentioned to his mom how he is. He says, of course, he loves you.
What years would you have found that the crowd was the most passionate as fans and like really into it? Because I've noticed today it seems like the crowds are fairly tame to when you watch older videos.
See, today, we'll just say today. Today, everybody thinks they know everything. You can go on Twitter or any other social media, and you can see a news story every 10 minutes. How this happens, I don't know. But everybody knows everything. And in this convention itself, it's full of experts. Everybody's an expert. So you don't have that same passion. If you read a book and you know the ending, you don't have that same feel to it that you would have as you keep on going. I think that owes a lot to it, you know. And if you want to go back again, the Madison Square Garden, back in Billy's day, and before Bruno and Billy. It was every month, every 3 to 5 weeks. We came out to every month, depending on when they get the date, and they would get 20,000 people every month. And then, at some part of Billy's reign, they opened up the Felt Forum. It's a theater right next to the Garden. They would show it on closed circuit. For the overflow crowd, they couldn't get into the Garden. So you're talking 25,000 people every month. So it was insane. But then the 80s got really big, and then the 90s. Today, you can't disagree. I mean, I just came from WrestleMania in New Orleans. There was 80,000 people. So to say that it's not as big, that's not true either.
But they're not drawing the crowds they were on a monthly basis to the same towns.
Because you can see it so much on TV. You can watch it through any device you may have. You can look on YouTube and you watch it. People are watching it constantly on the WWE network. You're watching wrestling all the time, so so you're not going to these spot shows. It's no real need to go, because if you miss it now, you'll see it tomorrow.
For independent promoters, you've seen a lot over the years. What advice would you give them as maybe a territory that they might want to copy, or some booking philosophies they might want to copy that you've seen that have been successful over the years? Okay, well,
to me, less is more. I go to these shows and they're just endless. They just keep on going. And I'll just say the same thing for the WWE. Nobody can sit through 4 or 5 hours of a show. I don't care who it is and what it is. I think if you have a show the way shows used to be, and you want to say it doesn't necessarily have to be the way it used to be, you start and you build up and you build a heat, and you get not everybody doing the same move and everybody doing the same thing. It's got to be a little, everything's got to be a little different to hold the interest. But what can you do? Again, the problem is you see it so much. There is so much available that you don't have that need to go every Monday night to Tampa or Tuesday here, and which used to happen, you know.
And you've written a couple of books. Do you want to tell us about them? I
actually have 12 books. There's 12 books out, and most of them are pictorial, whereas I'm not sprouting off my philosophy or what I feel, what I did, or what I seen or heard. It's more like more pictorial in nature, where you see what you might have remembered and watched. That's what they are. The last one was called Hot Shots and High Spots, and that was a couple years ago already. Yeah.
Where can people find your books if they want to pick them up?
Most of them are still available on Amazon, Amazon.com. I know because people occasionally send me a copy. I just got this on Amazon. I just found it. Could you sign it for me? And of course, I will. You know, but that's where you can find them.
And I'm sure you've known Hulk Hogan over the years. What do you think about his situation now, where he's kind of been taken out of the Hall of Fame and he's at a lower point? He won his settlement, but he's not as revered as he once was.
Well, he's not as revered. Again, it goes almost back to the Flair thing, because if you're a fan of today, you didn't grow up watching Hulk Hogan. You missed the Hulk era when he went big in the 80s and went crazy and people loved him and take your vitamins and what have you. Well, I think what the WWE did was bowing to was something that they felt they had to do, similar to what happened with Fabulous Moolah. Bowing down to what people were saying, they had to take him out because Hulk said this or Hulk said that. Sometimes people do talk, locker room talk. It wasn't necessarily for consumption, and it didn't mean that he felt that way. I don't think he actually felt the way he said. He was just talking the way people talk.
And what's your opinion on Moolah? Because I'm sure you've known her over the years.
Oh yeah, and she was great at what she did, and she did teach every one of those women wrestlers. And like a booking agent, she took her percentage. She might have taken a little higher percent, but to her, she justified it by saying that she gave them room and board and living quarters. So she felt that she was owed this extra money or percentage that they gave her. And as far as taking the name off, if you really want to look at it, WWE didn't say, we don't want to call Moolah because people are complaining. Well, according to the story, I'm not saying I even know, that the Snickers company didn't want to promote anything that had negative connotations. So they were going to pull out backing of WrestleMania. And if they're backing the whole show, what would you do? Would you say, I know I'm going to call it that? I mean, they've honored Moolah anyway in the past, and it was just a name in a pre-match, pre-show for WrestleMania.
Speaking of people who are backing entire shows, what are your thoughts on the controversy about them going to Saudi Arabia, where there couldn't be any women allowed on the cards and so forth?
But you can't buck what the country wants to do. I mean, that they got in is amazing. So let's take little steps. You got to take little steps before you take a giant leap. If they have a 10-year deal, whatever deal they may have, eventually, by just having these people come over and wrestle in front of an Arabic country, which they wouldn't normally get, is an amazing thing. Eventually, will the ladies be on the show? Yeah, I would say yes. Eventually, but you can't just put it in front of them. You're going to lose your deal, and you can lose any further future things that might come down the line.
Any final thought you want to pass along to our fans, and any social media you want to plug before we end this?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my friend, Superstar. He really was a good friend of mine, and I just didn't see him in the ring. We were really friends outside. I mean, really, really friends. He was great. And today, I'm not doing as much wrestling as I did before because I don't really have magazines of my own. I contribute to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, which in my day was my competitor. So all I'm doing now is taking photos, whereas before I would take the pictures and know what I was going to use them for and how I would spread them out amongst the various magazines I had. You know, today I follow wrestling mainly by Twitter because it seems to have so much stuff on it. But after a day of reading, I don't read it for a week because there's just so much stuff. I'm at Starshot 9, STARSHOT 9 on Twitter, and sometimes I'll put stuff of an event I've been to, whether it be music or today's kind of thing, or wrestling, or I put some old photos. That's what I do. I don't have Facebook or anything like that.
All right, well, thank you very much for talking to us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your stay here.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for talking to me.